Want to know what's in these boxes? Let's go and find out. Now you're probably wondering what's in these hook length boxes. Well, F1 fishing can be really confusing. There's all different, you can use different hooks, different lines. So what I'm going to do is run you through my setup so you can see what all hooks, hook lengths, sizes, increments, what sort of bands I use and what sort of like hooks and scenarios I'm looking for within my fishing. So if that was to interest you, stick with this because you're going to find out how to get a load of hook lengths which are going to cover you for all your F1 fishing. So let's get started with it now. So first of all, I'm going to start off with sort of my banded hook length fishing. So what I mean by this is I'm going to put in a band on a hair. So fishing for scenarios with hard pellets where you're banding baits, you've got like a hair rig so you can get a nice hook hold on it, so you'd be fishing with 4 and 6mm pellets, especially for F1s. And then you'd be looking into fishing either with casters in a band or some maggots in a band. So this is where I feel like it's really important to have obviously the correct band for the correct job you're using. So first of all, I'll run through the bands I use. So the small ones are literally a small latex bait band, just because this is going to be ideal for sort of your hard pellet fishing and sort of like your banding maggots. The reason this is, it's quite small and it's quite tight. So now you're going to get your hook bait staying in your band, so you can repeat that little thing. You can just go straight back out, straight back into your peg. It's nice and simple and easy. So that's your little bait bands. That's what I'm looking for, especially when I choose to use these, is how tight I want the band. Now, they're ideal for casters, but if you don't have really fresh casters, it can burst the caster. So the ideal band for me when fishing with casters in a band is just a medium size. This because it just allows me to get the pointy end of the caster, slide it onto the band with ease, just nice and easy as well. But also, if you do struggle with it, you can just use a little baiting up tool. So there's a couple I've got here for you, a little baiting up tool. So with your casters or your 4mm pellet, you can use a little tool there. And then with your banding maggots, you can just put your band into the obviously the bait bander. You can put it on, it opens the band up, you can slide your maggot, one or two maggots in, close it up, and with the smaller bait band it makes everything nice and tight and nice and versatile, and you can get away with a few fish, and it just speeds up the little process, especially when fishing for smaller F1s and stuff, just speed things up. So bait band wise, you've got the smaller ones I like to use for when I want a nice tight hook bait, so like 4 or 6mm pellets and sort of maggots for your bait band. And then the medium size I just like to use when I'm fishing with casters. Now you're probably wondering what size hook and what size diameter line I look to use and what sort of length. So I've got a few hook length boxes here, little small 6-inch hook length boxes, and that's what I like to tie all my hook lengths from a banded hook lengths in. I can put them in my box, I can keep them nice and dry, nice and stored, because obviously you're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of preparation making these hook lengths. You want to keep them in the best condition you can, because then it makes everything nice and versatile and easier to have. So I literally got an 013 box, I've got a 5-inch box for all my overshotting fishing, and then I've got an 011 box for all like my banded fishing. So I can versatile. I've got the 011 and 013s. That's the line I'm looking for when I'm fishing with this sort of like banded hook length range. Is I'll tie these myself as well, just because I feel like it's really important to get the band as close as you can to the bend of the hook, so it keeps everything. You can get a really good hook hold with that. Now you're probably wondering what you're waffling about for size as a hook as well. Now I like to keep it dead simple. I like to use either a 16 GPM or an 18 GPM. Now the reason why I'd pick either or is depending on how the fishing was or what I was fishing with. So if the fishing was say nice steady away hard pellet fishing with smaller F1s early on in the season or late on in the season, I'd probably look to use an 18. Just a nice all-round hook. It's probably like a go-to size. It's not too big and it's not too small. You're going to get a nice hook hold with it, but it's obviously nice and small, so you can get away and help get a few more bites. Now there is scenarios where the fishing's a lot better. Sometimes you need a bigger hook just to try and set the hook. So in the summer months, it's going to be sort of like bagging season. You want to be catching a lot of fish quickly. You want to make sure you're going to be using heavier elastics. That's one thing that's really important when you're selecting your hook choices, what elastic you're using as well. Not to go off topic too much, but when I'm fishing obviously with casters a lot and fishing with like 6mm pellets, I'm just going to try and match the hook. So that's why I'm going to use a 16 with that one. I'm just going to try and match the hook to obviously the sort of how I'm trying to fish. So if the fishing's really good, I'm going to look to use a 16. if it's a little bit iffy and I'm not sure how it's going to be and I want to be nice and delicate and just have a nice all-round size hook, then I'm going to use an 18. So that's what I'm going to use. So 011, 013 sort of fishing with them. Obviously, there's going to be scenarios where you do go to some venues, such as like I went to Red Hill last year and used 015 with a 16, just because of the size of the fish, and there was an odd carp in there as well. So it's depending, but strictly speaking, if I went to a lot of F1 venues, 011, 013 is going to cover me. So like your Tunnel Barn, your Monk Hall, your Western Pools, places that I fish regularly a lot. So that's what I'm looking to sort of use. And the reason why I've done this video is because I've got the Pole Masters coming up in a few weeks. In a couple of weeks, so I'm just sort of doing my prep now, so I'm just thought it'd be a nice little thing to run through all the hook lengths which I'll be tying up in my armoury. So you heard me mention, just going back to my hook length boxes, so when I'm looking for sort of like my hard pellet fishing, there's only like 3 sort of sizes I tie up for these. I'm either going to tie it 3-inch, 4-inch or 6-inch. Now I personally like to use different size hook lengths for different scenarios. So if the pegs say over 4 foot deep, I'm going to use a 6-inch hook length just because I feel it just gives a nice little fall, and I don't really feel like I need that last shot too close to my hook because of the depth of the water. Say if it's anything between 2 and 4 foot, I'm going to use a 4-inch hook length. I just feel that's the nicest way of in proportion of looking in my rig. And then anything shallower than that, I'm going to use a 3-inch hook length for all like my hard pellet fishing. Not to sound too confusing. Now, you heard me mention about overshotting. Yes, it's not the hot topic, people disagree with it, but it's one killer tactic and it's got to be in your armoury, because if you don't do it, you're going to be left behind, especially with match fishing. So my overshotted hook length box, this has just got a range of different sort of like banded, spades, different sizes, but mainly it's 5 inches, because when I'm fishing anything deeper than say 18-inch deep on that, that's what I'm going to use. So I just had a few tied up from there, mainly because of that Red Hill last year. If I fish anything shallower than 2 foot on an overshot, I just like to use a 4-inch hook length, just so the shot is not too close to the hook, so you get that nice wafty fall. And then my 013 box up, my caster fishing I've got in here. Now I'm going to speak about the sizes which I'm fishing with. Mainly in this box, I'm going to have a 2-inch hook length, a 3-inch hook length, and a 4-inch hook length. This because when I feel like when I'm fishing with casters, or even with pellets, they can fish and come quite high. So anything under 14-inch, I'd like to use a 2-inch hook length. Reason because the fish are feeding quite aggressively. I can get away with a shot close to the hook length. So that's where I look to use a 2-inch hook length. So without sounding too confusing, I like to use my hook length on how deep I'm fishing. So that's a rough guide. So if you want to write it down, you can put it into your fishing if you want to, or you can just use whatever you want to use. This is my opinion of what I use. So this is what I'm just talking about. So 2 inches when I'm fishing like 14-inch and shallower, 3 inches from 14-inch to say 2 foot, and then anything deeper than 2 foot to 4 foot, 4-inch, and anything deeper than that is 6-inch. Now it does sound confusing, but a lot of the time when I'm fishing, when I places like when I go to Tunnel Barn, I'm probably never going to use a 6-inch hook length, because I'm not really going to be fishing anything deeper than probably 4 foot, 5 foot, if that. I'm going to be doing a lot of shallow fishing, a lot of shallow water fishing, but especially at Western Pools, I'm probably going to use 4 and 6 inch a lot, because the lakes are a lot deeper. There's a lot more bottom fishing there, and obviously they're a lot deeper. They're probably from 4 to 6 foot deep there. So it's just a venue dependent on where you're going, but that's what I look to use for all my banded hook lengths. So just a little recap: we've got GPMs. I like them in size 18 and 16. Obviously, using an 011 and 013 power line. And then your bait band is really important, just because you want a small one for your tightness, and then obviously your medium just pop your casters on as well. But the medium, you can put a 4 or 6 mil pellet in there with ease, but I just like a nice tight band. That's personal preference, that is. Now the next one I'm going to talk about is a bit unique for me, or my style of fishing, but it might not cover a lot of people's. Is to fish with an XFS. It's quite hard to say that, and it just took me all winter to realise, but it's a really, really light hook. Now the reason why I use this is in scenarios is when I'm fishing with 010 and 012, and especially a lot of Western Pools when you're fishing with maggots and catching hide, and fishing on the bottom in earlier season, and places like Tunnel Barn when the fish are little bit smaller. and you get away with a nice light hook. It's something I've done this year which I feel like it really improved my fishing, is fish a little bit lighter, think about what I'm fishing for, and then matching my setup to that sort of fishing. So these are perfect, and I was still using these in the summer months I was fishing with maggot shallow, just because they're so strong, they're so light, so I just feel like it gives me extra confidence of catching them fish. They suck the bait in, boom, straight on. So that's what I like to use, that one. 010 and 012 power, AccuPower on that one, just because it's a nice light line, just so it goes on the hook lovely. Now, you're probably wondering what the hell is in this big box. Now, I've took the black clips off just to save me with these, because I do like it when I just slide open. It's still got a nice seal on it, so it's going to keep everything nice and dry. Now, in this hook length box, I've got everything from a Spade end fishing. So I've got, obviously, XFSs in here, I've got SFLs, I've got GPMs, I've got all sorts of like scenarios and different things I'm going to run through now for you, because I feel like this is my ultimate box, and I just keep it all in one place, so all my Spade end fishing. So I have all my banded hook lengths in the little ones, and all my Spade ones in a nice big grey one like this. Now, first of all, obviously I spoke about the XFS. That's going to be all like here with my 010 and 012, so it keeps it out of the way. The next lot I'm going to talk about, and one hook length which I really use is sort of like my soft pellet fishing, maggots on the bottom. When I feel like I need a little bit lighter hook, like I said, but a little bit stronger line than what I was talking about, it's just literally a pre-tied SFL in 011. Now, you may think, no, he doesn't use these. I actually do. I just think they're brilliant. I couldn't tie these personally any better, so I just feel like it's nice and easy. It just saves me a lot of time. Now, what I like to do as well, I have got a video from the early days of YouTube talking about this, but I like to shorten these down to either 4, 3 or 2 inch, depending on what I need the scenario. So I've got 6 inch that it comes pre-tied straight off the rig stick, and all I need to do is use one of these little loop ties, wrap it around the pin where it is 4 or 3 inch or 2 inch, and then use one of these just to make the loop on there. So 011, 16 SFL, that does me for like my early season fishing and my late season fishing, when I'm fishing on the bottom, when I need, say, a little bit stronger hook when I'm fishing with maggot shallow, stuff like that, but mainly bottom fishing with all maggots, soft pellets especially with lots of fishing up at western pools and tunnel barn and stuff. Starting on soft pellets and then say like spring and autumn months can be really good, but obviously it's still got the lightness of the line. It's a nice light hook, but it's a nice size, a 16 SFL, just a nice big hook that you can obviously set the hook with, and it just makes everything nice and easy. You can get your bait on, there's a nice hook point showing, you can just, it's little things like that, it just makes everything a little bit easier. I don't want to use a too small a hook, but then I get the nice lightness of that hook because it's not as heavy as a GPM, or it's a little bit stronger than an XFS as well. So that fills a massive gap, and that's in my box here. So I have all my 16 SFLs, so I have some 6 inch in there, 3 inch, 4 inch, and that covers me from a lot of my fishing, to be honest, especially at this time, coming out the spring months and then going into the summer months. That's when it gets really, really simple. These two, pre-tied again, are going to cover me for most of my fishing. So probably the all-round one I look to use in the summer months is a 16 GPM 013, nice and versatile. I'm not really going to get broke on that with sort of like F1 fishing. It's not too heavy where I'm not going to get enough bites, and it's obviously not too light where I'm going to get broke and I'm going to have to change my hook length all the time. Just a nice versatile hook. Same thing with that is I like to use that in 2, 3, 4 and 6 inch. So that just goes in me side here, my little one here. So I've got some 6 inch, some 3 inch, some 4 inch and some 2 inch there. You may be thinking, why have you got 2 inch? Obviously, because if I do fish shallow with it, with maggots, and I feel like the fishing's really, really good, that's why I've got a few in there. I rarely use, the most I use of this is probably a 4 inch or a 6 inch, with the odd time a 3 inch as well. But obviously, sort of like your mud fishing with soft pellets, a bit of worm fishing, that can all come into it. Meat, especially in the early spring and late autumn, can be really good. So that's where that one comes into it. So just a pre-tied SFL, like I said, it's on the rig stick, 6 inch. I can cut it down using my little tool. And then the last one I use is, I don't use it a lot, but when the fishing's really good and I'm using a bigger bait, so like a big piece of worm or a piece of corn at some places, or a piece of meat, or like say bunches of maggots on the hook, especially in the summer months, just using a 14 and 015. So when the fishing's really good, I just get like a nice big hook, just obviously get that hook hold. If I can get away with it, the bigger the hook, the better. But obviously with F1 fishing, the really finicky fish and really finicky feeders. So you've got to really think about what your hook you use. So when the fishing's really good and I want to use a bit bigger bait, say I can fish in casters on the bottom and I want a big visual worm on the hook, I'd look to use a 14 because I can hide a lot of my bait in that. Piece of corn's the same, bunches of maggots, 3 to 5 to 6 maggots depending on what I'm trying to do. That's the perfect hook scenario. So I'm just going to shut that box. We run through all the hooks there, so just a little recap. GPMB's in hide for all your hard fish, or all your hard pellet banded fishing, whether you're fishing with casters, hard pellets, banded maggot. The XFS, I can actually say it now, is a perfect little hook for if you just feel like it's a little bit delicate and you want to tone things down a bit, fish a bit lighter, just feel your way in, fishing with maggots, even with soft pellets with that one, perfect for that. And then you've got obviously the pre-tied rig sticks, which you can adapt, move around to suit what sort of fishing you're doing. So obviously you've got everything covered there, from a 16 SFL up to a 14 GPM with 015. So I say it's not a lot of, it seems a lot what I'm telling you, but it's not a lot of prep once you start to get into it. Once you've got a lot of stuff in your armoury, you would just be topping bits up all the time, but just getting the main bulk is the hardest part. So that's my setup for all my F1 hook lengths. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.